Hey YouTube, my name is Kat and I'm a 47-year-old birth mom to a 31-year-old who I am now in reunion with for the past 3 years. I am going to talk today about regret and a whole bunch of different sides of it. So for starters, I'd like to start with the definition of regret so that we're all on the same page and we know exactly what we're talking about here. The definition of regret, I Googled it before I, started the video. The definition is to feel sad, repentant, or disappointed over something that has happened or been done, especially a loss or missed opportunity. Okay? So it's not a bad thing. The definition right there shows that, it's really just to feel sad over something that has happened or a loss or something like that. So it's okay to feel regret. Along with that, there were a couple synonyms that went along with it, and they were to be sorry about, remorse, sorrow, and contrition. So regret isn't a totally bad thing. There are so many people who will say you shouldn't regret anything. It's bad to regret. When I was doing a little research for this video, there were like lists of like blog posts and stuff that were like 12 reasons you shouldn't regret anything that happens in your life, and I'm just like, why? It doesn't make sense. So now that we have the definition, I want to talk a little bit about my regret. Not raising my daughter, not being her mom, and raising her from birth is the biggest regret I will ever have in my entire life. It's not a bad thing. It's not something that I harp on. It's not something that I sit around and cry about and just sit there and wallow in. I don't do that. Yes, I regret not raising her. I regret not being the one to kiss her boo-boos and put Band-Aids on her knees when she fell down. I regret not reading her bedtime stories and pushing her on the swing and going to band practice and seeing her play her soccer games and taking pictures of her at prom and everything. I regret it all. I completely regret it all. And I think about the what ifs all the time. I have pictures now that I'm in reunion. I have pictures of her when she was little. So now I sit there sometimes and I think about what if, how would it have been, and snuggling up with her to read a story and I can picture it now. It was hard for me to picture it before because I had no face to put with the name and the person. Now I can imagine her at 5 years old and snuggling up in the crook of my arm to watch a show or whatever. So yeah, I completely regret not raising her. It doesn't matter how good her life is or was and has been. It doesn't matter how good my life has been or was or any of that. None of that matters in regards to regret. I don't want that to come off as bad. I don't want it to seem like, oh, she shouldn't have had a good life. She should have been miserable without me. And that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I will always regret, regardless how great either one of us has lived up until this point. It will always be a regret. I can't go back and change it, nor do I try to, but it is something that I will regret for my whole entire life. It also doesn't matter that I was only 15. Um, it's kind of a moot point to me because regardless, I wanted my daughter. Who doesn't want to raise their child? I mean, yes, there are a few people who really don't. But how could I not want to raise her? It doesn't matter that I was only 15. I still wanted my daughter. It was never a point of me not wanting to raise her. Um, Most people want to raise their child regardless of their age. I've heard of 70-year-old women having children and they want to raise their child. Just because I was 15, it doesn't matter. I still wanted to raise her. And because I didn't, I regret it. I completely regret not being her mom. The other thing that goes along with that is there are a lot of non-birth moms, people who have never walked a day in my shoes. They've never given their child up for adoption. Tell me, you shouldn't regret it. Oh, you both have had great lives. She was able to have this, that, and the third, and she was able to have vacations and toys and all the materialistic stuff that one assumes that one needs, although they don't need them, they're just nice to have. And I was able to grow up and live my life, which isn't actually the case, because once I had my child and she was gone, everything changed for me, and I basically had to grow up anyways. That's another video. But I really wish people would stop telling me not to regret it, and that it was the greatest thing that happened, and it wasn't. It was horrible. The whole thing about it, I wasn't able to raise my child. It doesn't matter that I was 15. There have been women all throughout history who have raised children from a young age. My grandmother, my grandmother was born to a woman who was 17, I think. And it was normal back then. And her husband was 33, so, yeah, okay, it was 100 years ago, but that's really not that long ago, and so people have always had children when they were young. And I'm not going to go into the stigma and everything, because that's a whole nother video as well. But it doesn't matter that I was only 15. I still wanted my daughter. And people need to stop thinking that it's impossible for a 15-year-old to raise a child. I was babysitting newborns at 13. Okay, yeah, babysitting is different than having your own child. Yeah, exactly. It completely is. Because you're more attentive and you're more caring for your own child than somebody else's. So it's not unheard of. It's not impossible. And people today are doing it. So I really wish people would just stop saying, no, don't regret it. It's great. It was a good thing. Everything happens for a reason, blah, blah, blah. The other thing about me being 15 is I could have been taught. I could have been taught anything. Every new mom is taught. It doesn't matter if that new mom is 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. You're always taught by somebody else. Why couldn't I have been taught at 15? Why was it so difficult? Did I have a career going? No, but I was working. I've been working since I was like 12, Would I have had a ton of money? No, but what does a baby need? Diapers. I have boobs for breast milk, She needs clothes. That would Could have gotten that. A blanket, you know. She wouldn't have needed anything. I mean, what is she going to need? You know, I don't want to get into all the toys and you know, developmental stuff and everything. Well, you know what? Back when, you know, people were growing up, and even in my era, what did we have? A mobile? I had a mobile in my crib. You know, so it could have been done. Okay. And again, I don't sit around harping on this, wallowing in grief-filled regret. Okay. It's things that I've thought about on occasion. It still comes up, but it's something that's important, and I want to talk about it. Okay. Also, I want to say that regretting is okay. It's actually healthy to regret. I don't know if I already mentioned this, but when I was doing the research for this, there was like a ton of blog posts and stuff about 12 reasons why you shouldn't regret, you know, mistakes you've made in your life, and, you know, like all kinds of stuff. And I was like, why? Why would you want to repress those feelings? That's completely unhealthy. Regret, like, how am I'm trying to think of a way to put it. You know, you want to regret, you want to process. You want to process, you know, what has happened in your life. You want to think about it. And regret is part of that. It's okay to regret. Again, the definition: to feel sad, repentant, or disappointed over something that has happened or been done, especially a lost or missed opportunity. Why is that so bad? It's not bad. I'm sad that I lost the opportunity to raise my daughter. That's what my regret is. I'm sad about that. You know, I mean, it's not something that's going to destroy me, but, you know, it's a regret. That's what it is. So it's not something I should be punished for. It's not something you should be punished for. It's not something anybody should be punished for, to regret. Okay? On the flip side of that, it could be hurtful, okay, to say that you don't regret. Adoptees, and I'm going to pause right here and say, no, not all adoptees, you know, not every adoptee feels the exact same way. I understand that. But a lot of adoptees, I have done my research, I'm a part of a whole bunch of different groups, I follow them and I listen to them. But and a lot of adoptees won't even tell you, because there's a, you know, and it's just like with birth moms too, there is society that has created this bubble or box that, you know, says, okay, this is great, okay, this is how it should be. So no, not all, and some just flat out don't, okay, they don't feel this way, but we don't, not all here, okay. So it's just a blanket statement to cover the masses, let's say, okay. But I understand that not everybody feels this way, but a lot do. A lot of adoptees will feel hurt by hearing that their mother, their birth mother, does not regret giving them up for adoption. Who wouldn't? I would. I mean, hell, like, if my mother now said to me, "Why I regret keeping you," you know, anything like that, that's, you know, that's horrible and it could be hurtful. So a lot of adoptees can be hurt hearing that, no, it's the best thing since sliced bread. I'm so glad that I gave you up for adoption. And I erred. I made a mistake myself. I told my daughter when we reunited. Um, when we re when we reunited, I told her, it was one of our emails. She was like, I understand you were 15 and, I have no regrets. I appreciate the life that I've lived, blah, blah, blah. And I said, oh, yeah, I was able to do what I needed to do and I don't regret it either. I gave you to people who couldn't have babies, blah, blah, blah. But I didn't know. I hadn't done any research. I hadn't done any learning. And I don't think that she took it in a horribly negative way or anything like that. At least I hope she doesn't. Because later on, after I had gone through some grieving and really started to process reuniting with her and my grief and the trauma associated with giving her up and everything else that happened to me during that time. I did send her a letter, and I told her that I do regret it, and that I won't harp on it or anything like that, but I do regret it, and that I was sorry. I was sorry for giving her up. So I did apologize for that and everything. So I mean, and it hasn't gone further than that. Um, but I did. I messed up. I told her, oh no, I don't regret it. It was great. You know, oh, it's horrible. But a lot of adoptees will be hurt by that. I'm in a whole bunch of birth mom groups, and there's a lot of young women in there who are, I would say, new to adoption. Um, to me, new to adoption would be you're not in reunion and your child's not an adult. Um, they range in age, basically 20s. There are some teenagers in there, but 20s. Their children are babies, 4, 5, 10. They do not have adult children. And there are a few women that do have adult children, and they don't regret it, blah, blah, blah. It's fine and dandy. They have a relationship with their child, and they're in reunion and they don't regret it or whatever. But the ones that have children, um, who are still children and they're not adult children, um, and they don't regret it, and my child is thriving and he's got all his toys and they go on vacations and they have everything that they could want and blah, blah, blah. That child is not going to tell you exactly how they feel, because children, and not just adoptive children, all children mimic parents and mimic adults. And we all know this. If you say a bad word, the kid says a bad word. They all mimic adults. So if you tell a child, oh, no, it's great, you're thriving, you have a great life, he's going to say, yeah, I have a great life. It's not until you become an adult that you start to process your own feelings. I didn't start to process mine up until just a few years ago. And I'm 47 because I didn't realize things. You don't think of things the same way as when you're 20. When you're 20, you don't think of things the same way when you're 30 and when you're 40. And I'm pushing 50. So, I've been able to process a lot more. I've lived a lot longer. So a 4-year-old isn't going to say, no, mommy, I don't like you saying, I don't, it's great for me. I want to come home. They're not going to say that. Most aren't going to say that. Some will. You know, so and adoptees can be hurt by that when they're older. You know, could you imagine growing up and like constantly hearing your mom say, you know, I don't regret giving you up for adoption? You know, even at like 16 and everything like that, that could be hard to hear. Especially, I mean, hell, especially at the teenage years, because then you've got all your hormones and puberty going on and everything. And to say things like that, I know the things that were said to me when I was 15 and pregnant damaged me beyond all repair for years. And I didn't realize it until reunion. Reunion has opened up my eyes to the person that I am, the person that was muted, and the person that I was meant to be. So just imagine having, you know, you're given up for adoption, you're given to strangers, because in essence that's what happens. Regardless if birth mom and adoptive parents meet, the baby is still a stranger. You know, they don't know the sounds, the smells, because they inherently know their mother from birth. So to them it's strangers, and then, you know, to hear that, oh yeah, it was great, you had a great life, you know, that's hurtful to a lot of people, you know. So it's not something that you should necessarily say, you know. And I understand it, I get it, I truly get it, because I said the same thing. I was, no, it's great, you know. Ooh, I was able to go on vacations and, you know, go to the Bahamas and Jamaica and Florida, and I bought a house when I was 15, not 15, 25. And you got, you know, you got vacations and you got whatever you wanted and needed, and, you know, you had this, that, and the third, and you had, I told her, I was like, oh yeah, it's great, you had siblings and a mother and father, you know. I would have been a single mom, and, you know, I didn't have any other kids, but maybe I didn't have any kids. I don't want to go into that because that's a whole nother thing, but I didn't have any other kids. So you would have been an only child and blah, blah, blah. So it's not a nice thing to say. It's not a nice thing to think either. It could just be hurtful, you know, and why hurt somebody you love? So, um, so yeah, so you want to be careful, um, with that language when you're speaking to adoptees, when you're speaking about adoptees, and when you're speaking to birth moms, you know, telling me I shouldn't regret anything. Like, how could I not? How could I not regret raising my daughter? I mean, it's just a misnomer. So, with that said, regret will always be there for me. For me, regret will always be there. For me to say giving my daughter up for adoption is not a regret. For me, that means I don't care. That's what it means to me. For me to say I don't regret giving you up for adoption, it would mean that I don't care. And I know a lot of people feel that way as well. It's how I feel. It's how I'll always feel. Um, it's not a bad thing. Again, I don't harp on it. I don't wallow in misery. I don't put it on her. I don't, you know, I don't live with it as a cloud over my head. But it's a complete regret, you know, and it's a regret that I will have until the day that I die. Um, And you know, it doesn't matter how happy she is, what kind of great life she's had, what she's done, what she's accomplished. It doesn't matter how happy I am, what I've done, what I've accomplished. None of that matters. It will still be a regret forever. And again, it's not a bad thing. It just means that I am sad that I lost the opportunity to raise my daughter. That's it. So that's it for this talk today. The next video, I don't know. I think I'm gonna do a reunion part 2 because I left out a whole bunch of stuff about when we reunited. I kind of only brought you up to us emailing for 11 months. So I want to tell you, you know, what happened after that and when we first met and everything like that, and then where we are today. So that's it for today, YouTube. If you have any questions or comments, you have anything you want to add to this, or you have anything that you want me to discuss about the topic of regret, you know, please put in the comments. I'd love to listen, and I'd love to share them with other people and maybe do a follow-up video if there's you know, enough of, you know, information to go off of and everything. And with that, you know, I bid you adieu. Have a good night. Thanks. Bye-bye.